Government in the region still also rely heavily on rent from petroleum and mining activities to cover spending for public services, debt payment, and potential to some infrastructure and job-generating investment.
But the most important thing is to make sure that the extractive resources are all managed in good governance practices and intended for people welfare as our constitution has mandated.
In Indonesia, the contribution to state revenue is slightly declining for the past years. It used to be hitting like more than 40% in the 1980s, in the 1990s.
What was quite interesting to emerge from the findings was that mining approval regimes across the world have vulnerabilities to corruption. It doesn't matter where they're located, the size of the mining economy, how established it is.
I should say, as far as the state-owned enterprises' involvement, they weren't involved because they signed away the right for the National Petroleum Corporation to take a stake in the block at later times. The way we've reported on this story is a $1 billion theft from the people of Nigeria. Ultimately, the cost could be vastly higher because the benefits of this block down the road are not going to be available to the Nigerian people because they've signed away that right.
It's very difficult in Indonesia to find information about ownership structures, about beneficial ownership, about companies involved in contracts, and about who really share the benefit of our natural resources.
The Panama Papers give details of 2.1 million offshore companies that were set up over a period of 40 years. Details of companies set up in 21 offshore jurisdictions, almost half in the British Virgin Islands.
The NGOs, civil society, media, and the private sector should do more to promote the law, and its vital significance to reduce the gap between rules and practices, increasing transparency and anti-corruption efforts, and to facilitate access to information.
The network of JATAM, the mining network, they access to information of the environment assessments documents in the subnational governments and it's rejected by the governments, but they against through the Commission of Informations and they win through the decisions.
Last year, the UK hosted this big anti-corruption summit. That was a couple of months after the Panama leaks, and a number of countries came there making very high-level sort of commitments on beneficial ownership in particular.
In many cases, the government doesn't know how many licenses they have. In 2014, for example, we get data of mining licenses, 11,000. 70% of those companies is not compliant. They don't pay royalties.
The end goal is not just to open up the data, but to actually use the data. So we are very focusing a lot on the how data can actually promote collaboration between the government and non-government actors.
For experience, there is high risk for local media to cover investigative journalism.
Contract disclosure is encouraged under the EITI standard, but because the Mines and Geosciences Bureau were so tired of being accused of corrupt, let's disclose it all, just to stop the rumors.
So this is It was designed bearing in mind that many of our chapters had never worked in extractives before. This was a new sector. We needed a tool that was also going to help them understand how it worked.
Over the past 10, 15 years has been coupled with the IT revolution. But let's keep in mind, the corrupt has also adapted, and sometimes they adapt even faster than we are. So one of the lessons is that we need to be ahead of the curve rather than reacting to them.
Lots of new learnings for me. What is this beneficial ownership? How is it going to go ahead? Open government data, there are lots of debates and discussions.
We've realized we all have to collaborate with everybody a lot more than we've done in the past on corruption issues.